understand that fascism is something much different and much more dangerous than the usual crap we see from the Democrats, the Republicans, the employers, etc.
Hello, my name is Stanley Heller. Welcome to The Struggle. The Struggle is on over 30 cable stations from Maine to New York City. For a change, we'll start with some good news. Some friends and allies released from prison.
In Saudi Arabia, authorities temporarily freed 3 of the 11 women activists who were imprisoned on what human rights groups say are trumped-up charges. Among other issues, they were protesting Saudi Arabia's ban on women drivers. Their arrest 10 months ago came just weeks before the kingdom lifted the ban. Some of the women have reported physical and sexual abuse while imprisoned. In news from Egypt, pro-democracy activist and blogger Alaa Abdel Fattah was freed from prison after 5 years. He was convicted of inciting a 2013 protest that broke a law barring public gatherings without government approval. He still faces 5 years probation, which means he will have to spend 12 hours in a police station every night.
True, they're not completely free, but let's celebrate any easing of their suffering. In a refugee camp near Bethlehem, Palestine, a 17-year-old medical worker, Sajed Munjed, was shot dead despite wearing a reflective vest to indicate he was not in any way a combatant. Israeli soldiers were on a raid. They met resistance and fired indiscriminately. Munjed is the 4th medical worker killed this year by Israelis. This picture of Munjed was taken shortly before he died. Bolsonaro, the president of Brazil, came to the U.S. recently to meet with Trump. You have a number of signs about Brazil and fascism. What's going on?
Many of us suffer under both.
Brazil maybe is the country where the growth of fascism is the biggest today in the world. In 2016, they ousted our President Dilma Rousseff, elected with 54 million votes. After that, they imprisoned in a lawfare President Lula da Silva, who was the representative of the people in the social change in Brazil. They put Lula in prison in a very lawfare trial. And now they won the elections with the support of Steve Bannon that made a lot of fraud together with the fascists of Brazil to win the elections. They won the elections with a fraud. Now today we have Jair Bolsonaro, who is a fascist president, and he gave a license to kill indigenous people in the Amazon, women in the streets, children in the schools. They are fascists, they are militias, and they are killing activists. We are now in Brazil, we have people out of Brazil in exile because of death threats. We have people in Brazil being killed in demonstrations, killing in the schools. So we are here to say we will fight for democracy in Brazil and against fascism in Brazil. Thank you very much. I belong to the Democracy in Brazil Committee in New York City.
Unite against racism and fascism! Unite against racism and fascism! Unite against racism and fascism!
March 31st, 1964 was a day of a military revolt in Brazil that ushered a violent dictatorship that lasted 21 years. Death squads would ride around Rio in limousines with blacked-out windows. Bolsonaro has ordered Brazil's present-day military to celebrate the coup. The Guardian newspaper wrote this: Brazil's celebrating the anniversary of the '64 coup is like Germany instituting Hitler Day, tweeted journalist Hildegard Angel, whose brother Stuart was tortured and killed in custody, and whose mother Zuzu, died in a traffic accident staged by military agents. Now back to March 16th, on that cold day, and the anti-fascist rally in Foley Square, New York.
Today we pay our respects to the victims of this fascist terrorist attack. We recognize that a unified global anti-fascist movement is more critical today than even 2 days ago. We stand in sorrow and in full solidarity with all those targeted by the far right, particularly at this moment, Muslims. We would like to pause for a brief moment of silence to honor those who were silenced by fascism.
But what I want to focus on today is the root of fascism, case in point, and how we can most effectively defeat it. In the US and other parts of the world, racism is a pillar of fascism. African Americans are no strangers to fascism and right-wing terror. The Klan is an ugly part of American history. The first police forces in this country were formed to catch runaway slaves and prevent slave revolts. But the resistance of the black community and whites, who together with blacks also put their lives on the line to fight men in white hoods as well as men in blue, is also an important part of our history. It's not always easy to work across the color line, but now more than ever, we need to be doing that and go beyond the identity politics that divides our movements and our communities. White people need to not just be on the sidelines, and people of color need to stand shoulder to shoulder with our white comrades. People of color and whites, immigrants and non-immigrants, all have a common enemy: the corporate profiteers of capitalism.
The Muslim community has been subjected for surveillance, discrimination, and singled out by NYPD, FBI, and Homeland Security. This is not something new. When you want your enemy, then you vilify him. So what happened in Iraq? They said that they have power, they have weapons of mass destruction. They invaded Iraq. Did they find any? No. They surveyed the Muslim community in New York City for 5, 7, 8 years. Did they come up with anything positive? No. They admitted that. They enlisted thousands of Muslims by Homeland Security and FBI. And their names are still on that list. They violated our rights as Muslim community.
I'm really thrilled to introduce our next speaker. Our next speaker is Jay Walker. He has been involved in activism around LGBTQ and HIV/AIDS issues for over 20 years. In 1998, he helped form the October 19th Coalition, which used direct action activism to raise awareness of hate crimes targeting LGBTQ communities.
Hey everyone. Like the men said, I'm here really to represent the Reclaim Pride Coalition, but I'm also here as a proud black man and as a proud gay man who stands up against the horror that we have been living through for the last 2 years every single day. We have to stand up against it. We have to put our voices against this growing fascism, this growing authoritarianism, this unleashing of hatred and bigotry and anti-Semitism and Islamophobia that has swept across our country. Hate crimes have grown at an astronomical proportion over the last couple of years, and there is no mystery as to why it has happened.
It's because we understand that fascism is something much different and much more dangerous than the usual crap we see from the Democrats, the Republicans, the employers, etc. It is something much more than attacks on the usual attacks of police on black people, the usual homophobic comments from politicians and the like. The left in the United States and around the world tends to equate fascism with everything that is bad. Austerity, the brutal camps at the border, police murders and the like. We understand that fascism is something a bit different and very much more dangerous. It is a social movement that recruits from the lower middle classes and even from working people, that engages in extra-legal and terrorist violence against individuals and organized workers working and oppressed people. The same forces, the same conditions that gave rise to Trump and the populist far right, the deepening social crisis that has resulted in falling living standards for the vast majority of people, the inability of the mainstream politicians, Democratic and Republican, to address this crisis, and the weakness of the left and of the organizations of working and oppressed people fuel fury with the existing world. A fury that unfortunately has been able to be directed for a large part not against the actual perpetrators of this, capitalists, their politicians, etc., but towards other working people, towards unionized workers, towards people of color, immigrants, queer folks, Muslims, and the like. It's this understanding that fascism is something very, very different from what we usually face every single day in fighting in our workplaces, in our communities, that has led us to see the need for a united front coalition that has as its laser focus mobilizing and confronting the re-emerging fascist gangs, the Proud Boys, the scum who showed up in Charlottesville, the murderers in Pittsburgh and in New Zealand, and who believe that the election of Trump and other far-right governments have put the winds at their back and have given them license to re-emerge on the streets of the cities around this country and to carry out the sort of brutal attacks that they've carried on in the past few days. And while we in UARF are committed to building solidarity with all the other struggles of working and oppressed people, strike support against austerity, against the repression of undocumented immigrants, against police violence, because we believe that these struggles are crucially important for people to understand that there is a real enemy, the enemy of the 1% and their politicians, and that we have an alternative that doesn't target other working people, while we in UARF also keep a laser focus on the need to outnumber the fascists now when they are weak. We do not want to be in a situation where the murders in Pittsburgh and in New Zealand, the brown scum that emerged on the streets of Charlottesville, that this becomes an everyday occurrence in the streets of the United States. We must confront them now. We must drive them off the streets. We must make it clear that they are unwelcome. Please join us in building this united front. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie Post. Just a very quick announcement. Hawk Newsom is the chairman of Black Lives Matter New York. He's an activist at the forefront of the new civil rights movement, dedicated his adult life to the betterment of his community and his nation as a whole. A native of the Bronx, he was raised in a devout Christian household. He holds a GED, Bachelor of Science, and a law degree. Hawk is engaged in protests and activities to combat injustice and police brutality. He works with members of the LGBT community, victims of human trafficking, and the mental health community. Hawk speaks all over the world on matters of social justice towards minorities. Give a huge round of applause. Hawk Newsom.
Shout out to everybody that's here. Shout out to Rise and Resist, Gays Against Guns, Freedom Socialist Party, DSA. I'm talking about people who really show up for black people all the time. People who always show up for black people all the time. I just had an argument with that right-wing dude that's running around trying to interview people, right? I love to fight with them. I'm gonna tell you the truth, I love to confront them. You know why? Because I went from a GED to a law degree, right? So I learned how to take this mind and what I accumulated in the Bronx and apply it to the law and to the facts, and that's where I challenge them. And if you put the facts up against white supremacy, they lose every time. The numbers and the irrefutable lesson, the irrefutable evidence is on our side every time. We ran around saying that policing in America is racist for years. Donald Trump passes the First Step Act. You know who the endorser was, the first endorser? The Fraternal Order of Police. Pay attention. The people who have been saying that we were lying all along endorsed a bill that said racism exists in policing. Are you? Right now, we have to confront these racists and these fascists at every turn. They show up to our rallies, we show up to theirs. You understand me? I don't give a fuck. I go to Fox News. I go to a fucking KKK rally. I go anywhere and stand on this truth fearless. Because I fight with facts and I fight with my hands. And if any of y'all seen the footage in Charlottesville, you saw us on the front line. You saw these colors on the front line. We're not here to play.
Out loud, but we'll post them on our site. We've got a statement from Catalonia, we've got a statement from Montreal, and we've got a statement from Father Luis Barrios up in Washington Heights from New Sanctuary. Just a couple more brief speeches. I'd like to introduce, is Andy here? Yeah, there you are. Andy Eisenson from the National Lawyers Guild is a gender ambivalent Jewish attorney mediator and practitioner of alternative justice systems, providing legal services to non-traditional families at the Chosen Family Law Center, and the president of the New York City chapter of the National Lawyers Guild. Andy Eisenson.
So I'm the president of the New York City chapter of the National Lawyers Guild. So if you see a neon green hat, that's us. We're here to provide legal support. We're also part of the coalition here, which is so we're standing with this action. If you don't already have the hotline number, it's 212-679-6018. If you get arrested or you need help, call us. We've got your back. Okay, that's what we're here for. I've also been a dedicated legal observer myself for almost a decade, and it's super weird to be at a demo in a normal colored hat. So I asked my therapist the other day, am I in an anxiety spiral or is everything fucked forever? And my therapist was like, listen, I believe that we're going to be terraforming Mars and building anarchist communes at the bottom of the ocean. And I believe that it cannot matter whether it happens in your lifetime and mine. Because if it matters whether it happens in our lifetimes, then we're fighting for ourselves and not for the future. So it got me thinking about the people that came before us, who laid the path that we tread, and the people that will come after us, our ancestors and our descendants in this struggle. Because the times when I feel like I'm closest to burning out is because I'm feeling like it's all on me. Like, my personal responsibility to heal the world is too heavy to bear. Of course it's too heavy to bear. It's not for any of us to bear alone. It didn't start with us and it won't end with us. And we have to think about that personal responsibility in the context of and in connection with our ancestors and those that will come after us, So we're working in coalition, not just with each other in this lifetime, but l'dor vador, from generation to generation. As Rabbi Tarfon says, it is not upon you to finish the work, but neither are you, O child of freedom, free to abandon it.
Right now, we can talk about national politics, we can denounce Trump's racism all we want, but half a mile away, there's one public housing development of many that exist in this city that is currently being poisoned by lead, that is currently being privatized by de Blasio's administration. Malcolm X once said that the biggest hypocrites are the North, who point to the racism of the South and denounce it. Yet they do nothing when it comes to the systemic racism that exists in New York City. Let's get something straight. New York City is the Jim Crow of the North. It is where broken windows was born. It is where stop and frisk occurred. And it is where right now 650,000 people, I'll say that again, 650,000 people, that's the size of Boston or Seattle, right now are suffering. They have no heat on certain days. They have no water on certain days. Their children have been exposed to lead and their government has concealed it. And then to make matters worse, they're using such atrocities to now privatize a third of it. So all these NGOs, and New York City has more NGOs and nonprofits than any other city in America. What we need from you is to actually help fight with NYCHA. What we need from each of you is to sign up and join with us. There are over 330 developments all throughout the 5 boroughs. We cannot do this alone. So we can denounce fascism all we want, and the hatred that's on display in Trump's rhetoric and at neo-Nazi rallies. But if we stay silent with NYCHA, we prove Malcolm X that nothing has changed. We remain the biggest hypocrites.
So I belong to Fight Back Bay Ridge. I'm from South Brooklyn, and we were there. We were at NYCHA. We were at MDC every single day till the heat went on and the lights went on. Today I'm here because I have so much respect for the people that helped us put this rally together, the people that came out here today, and I'm part of this team, and I'm proud to say that I am. Thank you. A couple of my friends, well, first of all, let me tell you something. When I came to this country by myself, alone, from Turkmenistan, which is a Muslim country, I felt very alone in this city, and I moved to South Brooklyn, very white neighborhood. And I'm proud to say that I know a lot of activists in South Brooklyn, in Bay Ridge, who are fighting against racism, Islamophobia, fascism, all sorts of hatred. Thank you so much for turning up for us, South Brooklyn.
No precedent! No precedent! No precedent! No precedent!
So I would like to end with chanting "Never Again Fascism" in Greek. My Greek comrades can help me. Ποτέ ξανά φασισμός! Ποτέ ξανά φασισμός! Ποτέ ξανά φασισμός!
From the United Nations about the plight of Yemenis. Charity is good, necessary, but of course the most important support we can give Yemen is to stop the Saudi-U.S. war against the Yemeni people. an exchange of signs in solidarity with Syria, from the streets of Moscow to the streets of Chicago.
And organizers in Gaza have called for a million-strong demonstration Saturday on the one-year anniversary of the start of the Great March of Return protests at the occupied enclave's separation barrier with Israel. A recent UN report found that 189 Palestinians were killed between March 30th and December 31st last year. Local reports put the total number of deaths at over 200, with thousands of others wounded. Israel has ramped up its military presence in preparation for the demonstration.
And now a treat. Photos taken in the New York Botanical Garden. It's one of America's greatest institutions. It's having its annual orchid show. The colors range from subtle to amazing. The exhibit this year is called the Orchid Show Singapore, a tribute to the city in a garden of Singapore, the biggest public attraction in that country. The exhibit in the Bronx is in the warm and humid greenhouses, and it lasts till the end of April. That's our program for today. See you next week at this time. I'm Stanley Heller for The Struggle.